What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Today, we're going to be talking our top running back handcuffs for the 2022 fantasy football season. Basically, these are the guys that if an injury takes place to the main running back on their team, they're pretty much plug and play high-end running backs that can turn into league winners. So make sure to tune in. If you guys enjoy, hit that like button, subscribe, give us a follow on Twitter at AllDayPigskin to continue interacting with us there. Let us hear in the comment section. Do you agree, disagree with the names on this list? Who else would you put on this list that qualifies for a top-end running back handcuff? Along with any other questions you guys might have, and we will do our best to answer them all. And lastly, make sure to check out the 2022 ADP Fantasy Football Draft Guide, now available for purchase. Has everything you can want at a great value. Top 150 overall player rankings in standard and PPR formats, individual player bios, tiers, projections, along with general fantasy advice. Details in the description. But with that being said, let's get into it. And as you can see, we have got our list of consensus running backs here. They are sorted per PPR, format scoring, but that doesn't really matter too much because for the most part, we're just going to be reviewing the names. Yes, we're going to kind of see where they are on the pecking order in terms of rankings and what it's going to cost you to ultimately draft them if you have one of the starters and if they have standalone value. So we will go into that and it'll be helpful from that regards. But let's kick it off here. So obviously we're talking handcuffs. So we're going to be scrolling down this list quite a bit until we probably get to our first name. So for me, it starts here at the number 25 name with A.J. Dillon of the Green Bay Packers. And to me, he is absolutely, in this conversation, he might even be the top running back handcuff for the season. Now, the problem is, people are going to say, well, at what point do you have standalone value? At what point are you just a handcuff? And that's a fair question because I think a couple guys on this list are going to have some standalone value and you're going to be able to plug them in from time to time. And that's why they're going to be a little bit higher on this list. I definitely think A.J. Dillon is one of those guys, but he's probably at the extreme. And I mean, this definitely verifies that because he comes in here as a top 25 running back. He's ahead of all these other names that we're going to mention. And I think partially the reason for that is because, people think that he is going to usurp Aaron Jones, but I don't agree with that. In fact, I think Aaron Jones is going to have a monster season. I think he's probably still going to, be the main running back as well, handle like a 60-40 type of split. A.J. Dillon isn't really that much of a pass catcher, but what you cannot deny is that when last year Aaron Jones was unavailable, A.J. Dillon did a great job of handling those situations. And, some might point to games where he had a large workload. I would counter that with the fact that, those games were either blowouts, they were games where Aaron Jones was hurt, or there were games where it was late in the season and, the Packers were resting their main guys. So I do want to point that out, maybe as a reason why I wouldn't be drafting A.J. Dillon as high. Now, would I draft A.J. Dillon if I didn't have Aaron Jones? Probably, but I wouldn't draft him as a guy that I'm relying on too heavily. Now, if you are an Aaron Jones owner, you want to take A.J. Dillon, it's going to be a steep price. That's the only thing that I don't like about that situation with him. So keep that in mind. I think we're going to get some potentially better value picks here later on when it comes to running back handcuffs. So let's continue here. A.J. Dillon, I do think definitely probably deserves to be in the top 3 conversation. In terms of viable offensive weapons the Packers have after Devontae Adams left, like it's Aaron Jones, it's Lazard, probably A.J. Dillon, and if Aaron Jones is gone, A.J. Dillon is going to be the dude, so he's going to have RB1 upside in those situations. But now moving on to the number 28th ranked running back, the number 2 guy here on our list, Kareem Hunt of the Cleveland Browns. Now, this is an interesting situation because, obviously Nick Chubb is ahead of Kareem Hunt and is the number 1 clear running back for the Browns. But also last season, we had D'Ernest Johnson kind of break out. There's been some rumors here potentially that Kareem Hunt, might potentially go elsewhere. Something like that might happen because the Browns feel like they have good depth at that position. And, Hunt is a pricey backup at this point in time. But if he does stick around with the Browns, what you can't deny is pretty much what's been the case for several years now, and that is he is one of the top end handcuffs in the NFL because he can absolutely be a lead running back. We've seen that when Nick Chubb has been hurt. We've seen that while Kareem Hunt was with the Kansas City Chiefs. And the Browns, what's going to hold true here is they are going to be a run first team. Now, what's going to happen if Deshaun Watson plays? I don't think that's going to be a situation that we're going to have to worry about. Honestly, I anticipate a pretty lengthy suspension. If that happens, maybe it'll be a little bit more pass heavy and there won't be as big of a focus on the run. But either way, Chubb, Kareem Hunt are going to be involved. If Nick Chubb goes down, the nice thing about Kareem Hunt, I've said this for a very long time, Kareem Hunt is the best overall running back on the Browns roster. Like, if he controlled the backfield on his own, he'd be a top 10 running back, in my opinion. So he's an excellent pass catcher. That's why I really like him in PPR formats. He can get it done in between the tackles as well. And he does have some, viable flex play possibility from time to time, especially in PPR formats. For him, it's going to be the touchdowns, the main thing there, and then how much D'Ernest Johnson is involved. That's why, he might not be as high on my list as in other years prior because D'Ernest Johnson is kind of coming up. So for that reason, Kareem Hunt might be a little bit more limited this season than in years prior. But let's continue on now here with probably one of the most popular names, and that is Tony Pollard of the Dallas Cowboys. Comes in here at number 31. And, all these guys here that we've mentioned are being drafted like in the top 7-8 rounds. And with Tony Pollard, I'd argue that out of all the guys that we've mentioned right now, he has the highest upside because, we've seen him be successful. We know that the Dallas Cowboys want to run the football. And, compared to a Kareem Hunt, he doesn't really have a D'Ernest Johnson there to compete with him. I think he is more versatile than an A.J. Dillon as well. The main thing is, though, Ezekiel Elliott last year played hurt. So I think a lot of people are automatically giving Tony Pollard maybe a little bit more credit than he deserves. I don't think all of a sudden he's going to get between 800 and 1,000 yards rushing. I know people really want to see that happen and, are giving the Cowboys a hard time because they probably overpaid for Ezekiel Elliott. Now they're forced to go with him. But I still think he's a talented running back. I think Zeke is still, when healthy, he's a top 10 running back for fantasy purposes. But if he does get hurt, which we haven't seen too often, that's been the one thing with Zeke. He's been very, very durable throughout his career. Tony Pollard, though, is a guy that's absolutely proven that he can get it done. I have no doubt in my mind if Zeke wasn't on the team, the Dallas Cowboys would be very comfortable with Tony Pollard. And in that situation, to me, he's arguably a top 5, top 7, top 8 running back across all formats. So Pollard is a very, very exciting option. He'd probably be the guy out of all the top 3 names up until this point where I'd be saying if I had Ezekiel Elliott that I'd be the most inclined to then draft Tony Pollard. Now, let's continue on here with another guy in Melvin Gordon coming in here at the number 33 spot. And I think you can argue that with Melvin Gordon, he returns with Denver, that he has the most standalone value out of potentially all of these backup running backs, all of these handcuffs, out of all the names that we've mentioned so far, because we saw it last season. Melvin Gordon outscored Javonte Williams last year. So, now that he's back, okay, maybe Javonte will have a little bit of a higher split in terms of the carries, but Gordon can still be that do-it-all running back. The Denver Broncos brought him back for a reason. I don't think he's just going to go away. And I think it's going to be a very, very similar split to last year. And the most exciting thing is the fact that he's relatively cheap, but has low end to mid-level RB2 upside on a week-to-week basis. I really do think, that we're going to see both these guys have back and forth big weeks from time to time. It's going to be frustrating if they're both healthy for the majority of the season. That's why I think Melvin Gordon arguably is the much better value if you if you're going to take someone in the Denver backfield, considering Javonte Williams is going like in the second or third round, which I think is crazy. But look, if either one of these guys gets hurt, whether it's Javonte, whether it's Melvin Gordon, the other is going to potentially go absolutely bananas. Because this is a stacked offense. Russell Wilson is there. I think it's going to be a high-scoring offense as well. They're going to have a lot of opportunities. That's why I'm really excited. And Melvin Gordon is a guy that I love taking a shot on late, not to rely on as a starting running back, but just to have in my back pocket. And if something happens, he's going to carry immense value going forward. But let's continue on here with another guy on our list. That is one Alexander Madison of the Minnesota Vikings. I think similar situation here with Tony Pollard, even though Pollard, I think, is going to get more usage throughout the season than an Alexander Madison. Alexander Madison is kind of a break in case of emergency type of situation with the Vikings. Dalvin Cook has been, known to get injured here and there. I feel like he misses like 2 to 3 games every single season, but knock on wood, it's usually not more than that. But Madison has proved that he can, handle that workload when Dalvin Cook is gone. He can do it all. He can be a pass catcher. He can be a run in between the tackles kind of guy. I do think he's being a little bit forgotten here. So if you have Dalvin Cook and you can get Alexander Madison in like the 9th, 10th, 11th round, that's great value. I would definitely be pulling the trigger on that because, again, with Dalvin Cook, it seems like he misses at least a game or two for one reason or another every single year. So I really like the value on Madison, probably one of the better values so far out of all the names that we have mentioned. And now let's get to our second to last name here on this list. That is Darrell Henderson of the LA Rams. Now, this has a lot to do with the fact that I absolutely hate Cam Akers this season. Not because I don't think he's a talented player, but because he's still pretty much a year removed from an Achilles injury, which is one of the most brutal injuries at the running back position. And, Darrell Henderson proved last season that he could absolutely carry the load for this offense. No more Sony Michel. Henderson is, presumably the number 2 guy, but I think you could argue he's the 1B to the 1A of Cam Akers. And I think he's in a better health situation than Akers as well. So I honestly wouldn't be shocked if this is for the entirety of the season, like a 50-50 split where you can get Darrell Henderson again. He's ranked here at the number 44 spot. He's kind of a forgotten name. People are just kind of getting back on the Cam Akers hype train. You can probably get him around the 10th round as well. So it's really, really intriguing with him. I think that people are just a little bit getting ahead of themselves with Cam Akers. I think it's probably going to take another year for him to really get back to where he was at. I don't think he's going to be as efficient. And honestly, it wouldn't shock me if at the end of the year, Darrell Henderson has better stats than Cam Akers, but he's being drafted as a backup, which shows why he can be so valuable. And if something does happen to Akers, if he has a setback, this backfield belongs to Darrell Henderson. And last year, when that was the situation, the guy was putting up high-end RB2 numbers, even had some RB1 weeks. So that's why I really, really like Henderson as well. But let's get to our last name on this list, a guy in Kalel Herbert of the Chicago Bears. A guy that I think maybe is the most slept on viable handcuff at that this season. I feel like not a lot of people are mentioning him. But last year when David Montgomery was hurt, Herbert stepped in and he filled in admirably. I think that can be the case here yet again. Whoever the running back is for the Bears is going to be a big part of this offense because other than Darnell Mooney, other than Cole Kmet, the running back position is one of the more experienced positions here. So I think either way, it's going to get a lot of usage. Kalel Herbert, basically, he's outside of the top 50 running backs. So keep that in mind. He's going to go well into the double-digit rounds. It's pretty much going to cost you $0 to get him if you're a David Montgomery owner. So he's probably the best value here out of all of these handcuffs that we have mentioned. Doesn't hurt for you to take on chance on him in one of the final rounds because you know that if Montgomery goes down, you're going to get pretty similar production from him that you saw last season. This team offensively, I think maybe could be a little bit better. So that's exciting from that standpoint. But overall, I think Herbert is one of the most underrated handcuffs this season. It could potentially be the main running back for the Bears long term once they, in my opinion, move on from David Montgomery in the not so far out future. But with that, we kind of wrap up this list. There's some other names here that can be mentioned, but I think these are potentially some of the bigger names to know. As always, let us hear it in the comment section. Do you agree, disagree? Who else would you put on this list that you're targeting as a top-end running back handcuff if you go by that approach this season? Along with any other questions you guys might have, we will do our best to answer them all. If you enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe. And again, make sure to check out the 2022 ADP Fantasy Football Draft Guide, now available for purchase. Details in the description. And in the meantime, we'll see you guys in future videos.